Okay, so I think this is the missing piece that's part of the build the extranet using modern SharePoint and Microsoft Teams. So if you look at my screen here, in this video, I'm actually going to walk through the build process. I will also bring out the whiteboard and we're going to talk about how does this modern SharePoint site and this Microsoft Teams kind of work together with the understanding that you're going to have multiple locations for this particular client. So all of this is in the context of building an extranet, giving your external users access to your internal information and locking it down, and the decision-making process with the site structure, the web parts used, the configuration of some of the web parts. A lot to unpack here, so let's get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with creating an external site that mimics the functionality and capability as this site. Again, this is going to be served as an extranet. Now, before we build this, I want to talk about my site structure that I have here. So what we have is that we're managing this particular client, our partner, using a Microsoft Teams site. So this team represents the partner as a whole. The partner is going to have sub-locations or various locations within their entity. So here, Wayo, so imagine there are a gas station, and they will have multiple gas stations across. So if you look at this whiteboard, let me just kind of help illustrate this, because there's, in my scenario, there's multiple layers, but you can either do 2 of these layers or you can do all 3 layers. And then also you can look at this in in the abstract way that solve other issues. So here I have, let me just draw a line in the sand. So so over here on the left, this is my internal company, right? And this is going to be the internal team that's managing this particular client. For this client, and I'm using client and partner synonymously, so I'm representing the same thing. For this client, this is going to be their project site. So for this client, we have an internal team, which is what you have here in the black, representing the client internally. Now, from that client, you're going to have multiple locations, right? So, for this particular gas station, they're going to have location A, location B, location C, so on and so forth. And it's these locations that Tesla is building these Tesla chargers, and it's going to be each one of these locations to where we're going to build up a project instance. And from here, you can have all type of roll-ups, right? Because you can have executives here on the client side that's trying to say, either one, how is this particular location performing and what's the status of the project? Or overall, how are we doing with all of our locations from a program perspective, and how are things trending? And that's what we're going to build. So I'm going to show you how to build this piece with the understanding that this is hierarchical. Okay, so we have that. So that's the relationship. Now, from a solution perspective, we have a few things working for us in our favor. In Microsoft Teams, we know that every team that you create in Microsoft Teams, you're going to get a default channel, and that's going to be the general channel. And then you can build as many other channels as needed, right? So we're clear there. On that team, we also know that we have a SharePoint site that gets provisioned. We actually have a lot of things, but we really want to focus on the SharePoint site and understand what type of site this is. This is a SharePoint site collection. And with a SharePoint site collection, I can now have a collection of subsites, right? So I have my team. I have the SharePoint site collection to store all of my files. That's done for me for free. And then what we're going to create are these subsites to represent the various locations, right? So the team represents the client as an entity. So this is going to be my client as a whole. And then what we're going to do is create these subsites that represent the different location instances at that particular client. I love this solution because what's happening is that under the covers, overarching, my security is implied, and everything I do under the umbrella of this team, aka site collection, is going to be scoped to this particular client, and I don't have any bleed over to accidentally to another client. And that's the whole beauty of this infrastructure. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started and create one of these from scratch, and then we'll talk about the automation. So what you're looking at here is going to be a location for a client. And then now I can, here's another cool thing, me being a power user, of course I can have my navigation link up to this, but now I can manipulate the URL, go to the parent, and this is going to be the main client site that represents all or summarize all the locations. And this is also my SharePoint site that was provisioned with my Microsoft team. Okay, so here we have, let's go ahead and create this. So here, let's go to, I don't want to bookmark this. I want to walk through the journey. Okay, so here's my team representing the client, and all these icons with the special symbol or that ring notation or icon, these are document libraries for each one of those subsites, aka each one of those locations. Again, that kind of shows you the beauty of managing the document libraries for each one of those sub-locations at the client and dropping in files. Again, because my internal staff inside of Tesla may only be 2 or 3 people to manage this exponential type project structure, right? And what I want to do is leverage Teams as a digital workspace, bringing all that information to them, minimizing the context switching, and now they can drop documents from each one of those locations and use this location number to distinguish which document they're dropping in. Okay, so that's that. We get that for free. Again, that whole setup and format gives you so many pros in leveraging the technology in this way. Okay, so the other thing we want to do, let's go ahead and switch over to SharePoint. If I go to home, that's going to be that same site that you saw with the summary of all the different locations. We know that when you create a subsite, the navigation automatically creates this as subsites. I think that's the name. We renamed that to be client site, so it's more meaningful in our scenario. And now as we create different subsites, this navigation automatically gets updated. And that's why we're using subsites versus other site collections. For those of you out there thinking in the back of your mind, like, no, this is modern SharePoint. Keep it flat, keep it flat, keep it flat. Okay, grain of salt, right? Sometimes we take guidelines or recommendations to as a blanket requirement for every scenario. And we as pros, we know better that there's certain edge cases to where it makes sense to break out. I'm not sacrificing anything with this model. Okay, so let's move forward with the subsite section. So now I'm at my root site. I go to the site contents. I go to subsites. These are going to be all of my subsites here. And now I want to do new subsite. And I have a naming convention that I'm following, right? So I'm prefixing everything. Now I forgot my naming convention, actually. So let me go to one of these. And again, this is manual, and that's why you want to automate all of this stuff. So here, my URL, because I'm sharing this externally, is going to have ext as a prefix. And we're going to go ahead and paste that in. And then this location number is going to be, let me see, let's just call it all 5s, right? And then the site title, what's my naming convention there? So it's just the name of the company and then the location number. So I can do that, fair enough. So I just go ahead and grab this location number. And notice I did not put in the ext here. Again, this is just, naming convention stuff that we made up. But that's what you want to do when you're building this out for a client. Come up with a naming convention, and then I'll show you when we put the Power App on top of this, all of this is going to be done for us. All we really need is the location number, and we would stamp out everything else to make it consistent. When I get to the permission piece, I do want to break inheritance, right? I want to be very controlled on who has access to the site, because I may run into a scenario where I may have certain people at the client where they only want to give them access to this location, and I may have a mixed bag of, oh no, this is the sales director for location 1, location 2, location 3. this person needs access to all three of them. She needs access to all three, right? So let's go ahead and make that happen. With this subsite flexibility and breaking inheritance, I get the best of both worlds. So now my navigation structure, I'm going with the modern navigation structure. I don't want that classic navigation to appear at the top. So I'm turning all of that off, only in adding me to the parent, and then go ahead and create new, right? And oh, I blew past that, but I selected the first option to where actually like, did I want a modern site without 365 groups, so on and so forth? And the answer to that was yes. Okay, so now I'm going to leave these as is, go ahead and create OK. I'm OK with this subsite creating their own SharePoint groups. Totally fine with that. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, if we're mimicking this, what you see here is that you have a hero, you have quick links, you have events, and then all of this is really, really straightforward. So, okay, so what we're going to do, let's go ahead and build this out. This is the one UI trick that a lot of people get tripped up on. It's pretty funny when I see this. But the biggest question is going to be, Deshaun, how did you do that right bar, right, with the different color? Because I couldn't get that vertical bar to show up. So the secret to that is you're not going to get this by default. You have to hit plus, pay attention to your options, use that vertical section. That's what you're looking for, and that's going to create it. You can only have one vertical section because what this is going to do is span across all of these rows and appear over to the right. You click on that. Now you can change the color to that vertical section and then start to stamp out your web parts. So for our scenario, we need to reuse the quick links. We need to reuse I got events and then teams. Let's see how many of those out of the box I have. I have activities. I don't need that. That's super confusing and it's awkward because they use that tile layout. I really wish they give us another layout. And I don't think we need news, and we do need the document library. So because I have this vertical section, for the most part, I'm going to stick with either a 50-50 on this left side, or I'm going to do a single column. So in this scenario, let's just go ahead and start up with single column. That's going to be my document library. And now I want to bring in my hero web part. Now with the bringing in the hero web part, I just want to add a section and then drop it in. The reason why, and we know that you can stack these web parts in the same section, but I get more flexibility if they're separate sections because now I can throw a different background color here, right, than what I have on my documents. And it just gives me way more flexibility. That's why I do different sections. I don't always do that, but it's just, just understand that if you need a color change or to add some variance, the different sections give you that flexibility. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just go ahead and stamp this out. I'm going to bookmark all of these to the default home page, right? And actually, I probably should pause this video so I can get through this. Right. So here I got all of my tiles in. Again, I just wired up the links, nothing fancy there. And now the next thing I want to do to really make this pop, I want to choose some images. The images are what's going to make this pop. So to choose the images, I just hit the pencil icon, background image, custom image, hit change. And now I have my library of images to choose from. Now, with this, you can actually have a corporate asset library, which is extremely useful because now you can have your branded and certified options from your organization available here. So I can have the official logo. I can have the official headshots from the executives or management team. I can have the official templates, whatever the case may be, location photos, product photos, XYZ. That's an asset library that we want to enable. I have that on my to-do list to kind of run you guys through that. From here, I always, 90% of the time, go for a stock photo because these are going to be two things. These are going to get, they're going to be high res. They're going to be pixel perfect because someone took these photos intentional. If you ever had a photo shoot, you can know the painstaking time it takes to get through one of those. So these are going to be pixel perfect as the photographer meant these to be, right? So that's why I gravitate towards stock photos. And you can keep this as business related as you want. Of course, you can, if you spell it right, right? So, and, and then just kind of get through that. So let me just go through and get all these photos added. Okay, so now that I have my photos added, now I can add in the different titles, right? Because what we're doing here with this hero web part, we're calling out different key areas within the hero. Now, the question you may be asking yourself, and this, I want to get through these decision-making processes so that way you guys are on the same page and you can apply these techniques and look at it from your scenario, right? Because what I'm showing you, you should be looking at it in an abstract way. No one's building Tesla charging project sites, right? So the reason why I went with a hero versus a news is because this is meant to be static and I want control over when these rotate or when these roll off or when they change. With a news, every time I add an announcement, it's going to pop into these different tiles until it rolls off and then it's no longer available. And then I have to make up another mechanism for them to get to access of all the past announcements that are not being displayed in these slots. With a hero, at the end of the day, all they are, especially if you're using the news web part versus the hero, is just an image, a link, and a title, right? Really, that's all it is. And I can achieve that with one of the two. Hero is going to give me more static approach, where news is going to give me more of a rotational announcement news approach. Okay, so that's the reason why we do that. So here, if I look at this, I need to get these titles in there. So let me just go ahead and drop these titles. So this is going to be, you're going to let me copy this or no? So now all I need to do is just drop in the titles. And that's just simply dropping in the title section here. So I have all of these copied over in the notepad. And now I'm going to just go ahead and drop them in. Okay, so now that I have them in, you will notice that if I flip back over to our master site, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4 tiles, whereas in the template that I'm building, I have 5. So I actually have one too many. So when you go and modify these, understand that for each one of the tile, you have 3 editing options here. You can switch on each one of the tile to edit that individual tile with that pencil. You have the pencil here to edit the properties of the web part as a whole, which determines the count and things along those lines. And you also have the edit option to edit the section. That's where I go to change the background color, the different layout types and things along those lines. Okay, so now that I have it down to 4, I'm very similar. I'm getting very close to the similarities that I have in my master site. The other thing I want to do is to drop in these quick links and give the quick links a title. And that's another thing to keep in mind. If you don't touch quick links, if I publish this, the default name, I don't know why I'm getting this error, but the default name goes away. So it's one of those things that you should name if you need it. And if you don't need it, just leave it blank in its natural state. So here I'm going to just go ahead and drop in these quick links. The first thing I want to do is use the button layout. That's going to give me that bounding box color. And now all I have to do is drop in these labels and then select a icon to represent that label. So now if I do edit and you just call this the project plan, and then for the icon, I need to go and find that icon. And this is why reproducing these sites manually becomes a really thorn in your side, because you have to spend some time to find all of the icons that were used on the master site. So here we get lucky for the project icon, right? So that's the project icon. But for all these other ones, I might have to search and kind of do best guess keywords to try to filter these out. Again, you can kind of see the pain of this and being consistent every time a project site is requested. But let's go ahead and get through it the manual way. And then again, we're going to talk about automation in the next video. Okay, so I went through and I was able to get all of my quick links in there and then the matching icons to kind of match the master site. And let me show you this one little trick. So the trick is, what if you can't find the icon, right? There's only so much browsing you can do, and I think there's almost thousands of icons in these libraries. So the question is, how if I see an icon that's being used in the other area, how do I find that particular icon in the icon library? And the trick is going to be, go to your site, right click and do an inspect, and what that's going to bring up are the developer tools. So let me just go ahead and refresh this. Let me try it again. So if you inspect this, no, still seem not to be working. Okay, so now what we're going to do is everything else is pretty simple. So you drop in the events web part, and then you drop in the profile web part or the people web part. So let's go ahead and drop those in. And the whole purpose of this right well with the events and people is one, events, not necessarily events as in this is the time that we're going to meet at this particular place, or here's an actual meeting invite, but it could be milestones as well. So, just because, you have the term events, you can rename this upcoming milestones or key events or whatever the case may be, but understand that we're looking at this in the abstract way. We're using the mechanics of the web part and not necessarily the name of the web part, because all we need is a date, a calendar, and to brings people attention to something that's happening on a certain day and time. Okay, so just want to keep that in mind, because a lot of people may look at this and say, well, we don't need events. Well, what if you have key milestones or key deadlines that are coming up? You can use that as such. So here we're going to just go ahead and leave that there. I'm okay with the placeholders because that leaves us primed for people to go ahead and drop in who they need to do. And then for my profiles, I can go ahead and add in the necessary people. And again, this profile is meant to be key contacts at Tesla to contact in the event you need to get in contact with your project team here at Tesla. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to name that your team. And this is in the context of the client, or in this case, the location at the client, so they know who to contact for, something comes up and they need to get in contact with someone. Okay, so now I think we're good with the right rail. So now let's go ahead and move over to the left side, and we have our hero, which we built out, and then we have our recent documents. And now the charting. I think this is the biggest question that we started to receive in the comment section. How do you build these charts? Are these Power BI charts? Or is this something like, is this an embedded chart from Excel? What exactly is this? And these are going to be quick charts. And with our quick charts, and again, just using my own section, I'm going to split this up to a 50-50, and that's going to be the quick chart web part. Now, I love the quick chart web part because, one, it gives me a quick graphic and layout without having to, one, know Power BI and understand how to wire that up. And two, it gives me a lot of flexibility on how to provide the data. I can do one or two things here. If I click on this chart, I'm limited to only two options, which for the most part, I'm okay with that. So let's do the column chart or the bar chart first. And then I can do one, I can enter in the data. And every time there's an update, like as a project manager, I need to do a status report. I'm going to just have it part of my exercise to report out every week to come here and put in the information I need for the chart. So here you have a data label. So what labels are we using here? So we have quantity. So this is going to be quantity versus category. So let's just call this inspections, install, delivery, and quality. So inspections, install, delivery, and notice how I'm just adding these, and then quality. So once I have my labels, now it's just asking me what percentage are we complete. So for the inspections, I'm maybe 50, and for install, I'm 80%, and notice that my bar chart is going to respond based on the values that I'm putting. And now I can put a legend here using the layout section to label what my horizontal axis represent. So let me just do something like project milestones or something along those lines. And then for my vertical, I'm going to do % complete. So now anyone that's looking at this from the naked eye can get a sense of what actually is going on. And of course, spelling is everything, right? So here's the % complete. And of course, this project is done is when all of these hit their complete. Right here in the snapshot, you know where all of my key departments are, and my key milestones are within the project, and how we're tracking. Now, the other piece we want to do is something on budget. So this represents the task. How are we doing it on the task front? And this is going to represent how are we doing on the money front. So from the money front, what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at the budget spend, and we're going to use a pie chart to represent the budget spend. And this may not be the right graphic or the right chart type for this, but that's what we have, and that's what we're going to work with. So here I'm going to just, first all I can do is give these a title. And now for the budget spend, we want to use the pie chart. And it's going to be the exact same layout to where each one of these data points that's represented in the pie chart, you can add those as needed, and you can enter in the data here. So here I have some key data points that we wanted to add. And before I put the values in, you can see how my chart is very responsive. So it's pretty distorted because it really doesn't have any values to really kind of shape it up, because pie chart is going to be what percentage of these values make up the whole. So here I'm going to say the remaining budget is 45%. And then permits, we're using, let's just say 10%. And then for delivery, we're burning at 15%. And installation, that's going to be the majority. So we're at 65 there. Yeah, so for here, what I can do is put in some real dollar numbers that says, okay, we spent, or so far we have $4,500 remaining. We're spending $2,500 on permits. We spent $15,000 on delivery. Installation was about $65,000, and management costs is $45,000. So if I put in those budget numbers, what's going to happen with the budget chart is that it's going to reflect those numbers and create percentages based on the whole and how much is with the burn. Now, obviously, you're going to have to use this a separate mechanism that says, okay, I was given 25,000. This is our current burn rate, and then come up with 45. The remaining dollar amount, and that should complete the chart. Okay, so that's how you do charting. Now, I said that there was a couple ways to do that. The other way, if you look into this, you can actually wire this up using a SharePoint list. So here, if I go to select the list data on this site, it's actually going to do a scan and say, do you have any SharePoint lists that I can grab it, I can leverage to show this, to represent that data within this chart. And I don't have a list here, but understand that's another opportunity that you can do that. The benefit of using a list versus edit data right here in the web part is that, one, the list can be driven through an automated process. So you can have extracts happen. You can be very fancy, create Power Automate to populate the list, so on and so forth. But here in the web part, if you don't want to go through that task, and automation is not something that you need right away, you have the best of both worlds with a manual entry versus a list-driven data entry. Okay, so if I flash back over to our master site, I think for the most part, we're looking really, really close. The only thing that we're missing is going to be this divider here, and that's pretty simple. So I'm going to just bring in my divider. And I love the divider because most of the time when I break these pages up, I love either using color to separate the two, or using the divider to kind of help segment or separate the elements on the page. Now with the divider, there's one, it looks like you have a couple now, and this is one of the things that have grown over time. But here you can use the length to kind of show how wide you want it to be between 0 and 100%. And then the weight, which is going to be like, if you look at this as a horizontal rule, how thick that line is going to be. So I'm okay with a 3 weight or maybe a 4 weight. And then I'll just go ahead and publish that, get rid of all the bounding boxes, and really kind of see what that looks like on the layout. The only thing I'm missing here on my documents is going to be my folder structure. So I can go ahead and build that out. But that's going to be pretty straightforward. Outside of that, the last piece of the exercise, and we don't have to go through it here, is just building up the linking, right? So my project documents is just going to link to my project, my documents folder. So really, I just leverage what I get out of the box here, rename this to project documents, keep it wired up to my default library, and then get rid of the links that I do not need, and then add the links that are missing. And that's just a simple linking exercise, right? You just click on the plus icon. I'm going to just use this site as my placeholder URL. And then just say, okay, we need a issue tracker. And actually, the issue track. Let me use another one because the issue tracker is actually a real thing. So let's just say that we need a team workspace. There's actually a couple things here I want to show you. So just call this the team workspace, and click here. Now, there's a couple things I do want to show you. Now, this internal site, this only shows up for the Tesla internal staff. Right? So for the Tesla internal staff, when they're visiting a location site for a client, for convenience sake for them, we want to add in this internal site so that way they can get back to the main parent site. For other people or other external users bound to this location, they don't need to see this. They're not going to have access to it. So there's no need to show them this just for them to receive access denied or please request access. So with this, we actually hide this with audience targeting. So let me do this. Let me grab this URL. This is the link to our internal site. Go back to our project site. And the first thing I want to do is make sure that audience targeting is enabled. So I have to go right here at the bottom, right above these action buttons, copy that URL, and then just name it internal site. And then the question is going to be, who do you give access to, or who do you audience target this for? In our scenario, again, leveraging our structure of how we're leveraging the team, the default site collection, and then all these locations as subsites. From a security perspective, a lot of this security management is going to have a much better story because I can manage this now by managing the membership of the team. So all I'm going to look for with the audience targeting group is the Microsoft 365 group that was created for this team, which is SS Charge of Wayo. So now if I just start typing in SS Charge or SSCH, right? Right. So now this is going to bring up all of my supercharger projects, and you can see all of my different clients that I have. And for this client, I'm looking for my internal team that's on the Wayo project, right? And now I can select that and click OK. Again, a beautiful story, because now with that wired up and configured in that manner, anytime that my team members come and go, or maybe I have an internal employee at Tesla that gets reassigned, I'm going to just add them to this team, and they're going to automatically get access to this internal site link and then automatically get access to this site. Well, automatically get access to the site once we grant them access, right? Because we broke inheritance. So now what we can do, we can go to site permissions, go to the site owner, share the site, and instead of adding individual team members, I'm going to just use that exact same strategy. I'm going to add the Microsoft team group, which is SS Charge. And again, here are all my project owners. And now I can just add in my Wayo members. And that's going to bring them in as owners. And now I can have full control of how I want to grant them access. And I can play a lot of tricks here. I can say the members of this team would get edit access. I'm sorry, the owners of this team would get edit access, but the members would get read access. I don't necessarily have to give them read write. I can just have them read only, but give them access, but all they can do is view it. And now what I can do is do SS Charge again, get the ownership group for Wayo. These are going to be the owners of the Microsoft team, and them I can either give full control or edit access. So in this scenario, it makes sense to give them full control. I don't need to send them an email notification, and then I can just go ahead and then share this out. Okay, so now we have our navigation. So we're not going to, it's not fully built out, but that's pretty trivial. So we're going to allow you to use your imagination to build those out. And now when it comes to the document library, this is something that we want to build. The one piece that we do want to add is an issue tracker. So now on the home site, I can just go new list, and I'm going to leverage the template for tracking issues, and that's going to be that issue tracker there. Say use the template. I'm okay with the default name. I'm okay with it automatically adding this to the navigation, and just go ahead and hit create. And just like that, I have an issue tracker ready to rock and roll. So this whole site setup is now primed and ready to go. And the only other thing that's missing from a manual step is to change the look, and I want to use that Tesla red. So we actually do have the corporate branded theme, which is a custom theme installed on here that's available not only for every site collection, but as you can see, every subsite. So that's going to be available to me, and that's going to give me that Tesla red that's exact based on the hex number. And really that's it. Now, as you can see, just to wrap up this video, as you can see, we can achieve this, and it doesn't take a lot of time. It's not a ton of time to do it, but it's a tedious thing, and there's a lot of opportunities not to be consistent. There's a lot of opportunities for variance and change, and that's what we want to avoid. So what I'm going to show you next is how do you automate this using Power Automate in a third party. And this is one that I think is going to be, this is probably one scenario where I probably would go third party, because the value prop and the price for this particular third party is minimum compared to building this manually. Now, if you want to build it manually, we can talk through those scenarios as well. But for the majority of us who really just need a repeatable process to get this done, I'm going to introduce this third party, and we're going to do that in the next video. Until then, any other questions, either leave it in the comment section, fill out that form. I'll see you in the next video.